before moving to Virabhadrasana 1, I wanted you and I together to understand exactly how the action of steering works. We've all held a car steering, and when you hold a car steering, usually you typically are supposed to hold it at least in the 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock positions. So the hand is now holding the steering. When you steer, right, when you steer, the hand which was at 10 o'clock holds firm on the steering but kind of moves upward in that steady hold, and the other hand which was at the 2 o'clock position comes downward. The same thing if I held it parallel to the surface of the floor, then as we steer, one side moves back to front and the other side moves front to back, correct? And in the mechanics of steering, it's not just that steering turns, the entire vehicle turns, the wheels turns, all of the there is a turn almost completely in the entire vehicle, not just shown in the steering. So steering, two things to remember: everything turns. The other thing is there is movement back to front and front to back, correct? And that we have to first establish when we go to the leg position of Virabhadrasana 1. Standing in Tadasana, taking your hands in front of the chest, elbows elevated, deltoid shoulder blades quiet, palms separated so that there is good space, broadening of the chest and no congestion at the sternum. You have to remember to traverse the length and breadth of Urdhvastasana and Parshvastasana as you jump nice and wide. Now when you do that, immediately adjust the feet, points of contact, big toe mound, fifth metatarsal, heel bone, and the leg bones organized over the calcaneus, not to drop ahead of it. Make sure now, remember what we did in Wall Tadasana. The rib cage ascends directly over the pelvis and not ahead of it. That is, we should not encourage ourselves to stand like this where the rib cage projects forward, and even worse, the tailbone and sacrum are thrown back. So keeping the thighs back, you have to think of keeping the thighs back, really trying to hold the gluteus in, which we briefly activated when we went to Supta Tadasana, but we'll have more of that next class, where the gluteus engages toward the pelvis while keeping the thigh back, and then with that pelvic stability, the rib cage lifts up. Then momentarily, in order for us to establish the leg position first, we are going to take our hands on our waist. And then first we completely turn the right foot out from the root of the thigh, and then turn the left foot in around 60 degrees. It doesn't turn in all the way, it turns in only 60 degrees. At this point, I would like to establish that while the legs have turned, and for Virabhadrasana 1 or Parshvottanasana, which is not a lateral pose, rather a forward facing pose, the entire body should turn. As I said, the entire body faces front. It's not just a portion, not just the steering, but the entire body should face in front. But what generally happens is this: the leg turns, the head turns, the shoulder also maybe turns, but as it lowers to the waistline and pelvis, there is a certain skewedness. That is, there is a certain lack of symmetry. There is not a complete rotation. So in order to establish that complete rotation, we have to think that the right hand and left hand are holding a steering, which is the hip. That is the way we want to think of that. And then the hip has to be steered into a rotation, where just like one hand moved from back to front and the other moved from front to back, you want to get the back leg's hip steered forward and the front leg hip, where the femur lengthens to steer the hip backward. It is not just pushing the hip backward. The femur lengthens to steer the hip backward. You want to steer the hip in one plane. And this steering will ensure that it was not just the head or shoulder, but the entire pelvis comes. At this point, in order not to forget and to tell you that this is still work in progress, there is a lot of detailing that is still left. We have to understand that once, though the pelvis is rotated, the front, as you can see, the front, can you take this arm up? Yes. the front, that is from the frontal pelvis to the frontal rib cage, there is a slightly forward arching lift and the back of the lumbar is short. This tells me that the pelvis front and back is not symmetrical. Left and right may be, front and back are not symmetrical. In order to avoid this sharp drop or shortening of the back of the pelvis, we have to remember to lift the front of the pubic bone up so that the back, first of all, the spine stands straight where the rib cage comes over the pelvis and the spine does not break into a front and back half. Hand down. I'll show you that a little once again. When you turn and we think that using a steering, we are steering the pelvis, you can relax. When we are steering the pelvis, yes, the pelvis comes in plane as far as the left hip and right hip are concerned, but you can see there is a shortening in the back of the lumbar and a length in the front anterior face of the lumbar with the abdomen projecting forward. It is very clearly established that the rib cage here is front and the sacrum is somewhere else back, where the length of the spine is not linear the way it was in the wall when we did Utkatasana and Urdhvastha Tadasana, rather it is skewed. To correct this, first this pelvic drop or the anterior pelvic tilt has to be addressed, which I will come to later, but for now we have to remember to raise, you see, to raise the front of the pelvis to make sure the spine is erect on the back leg, not dropping over the front leg, right? The spine is erect, you have to lift the front of the pelvis, weight is stabilized on the back leg, and then the evenness of the front and back of the spine is established, rib cage over the pelvis, not ahead of it. We have to correct this. Now, once again, hands in front of the chest. On the left side, jump open the legs apart. Take the hands on the waist. Left foot out fully, 90 degrees from the root of the thigh. Right foot in, and as the right foot comes in, you'll have to establish that steering. So as if these two hands are holding the steering, where the back leg hip steers forward from back to front, the left leg, the femur comes in and then steers the hip front to back so that the hip comes in one plane. Immediately you want to map, is the spine short? Posteriorly is the lumbar short? Anteriorly is the abdomen or core muscles going away from the lumbar and not supporting it, in which case you have to think of lifting the front of the pelvis up and bringing the weight directly over the spine so that the rib cage is over the pelvis. This alignment we have to first bring. Now we will turn back in front and then step our feet together back in Tadasana, and here I want to talk about how the crease of the buttock, when properly adjusted, addresses both the blood supply and the innervation of the entire posterior face of the leg. For this, I would like the practitioner to face the wall and then stand with one leg forward and one leg backward. It could be any leg. Usually when you stand in this manner, so I'm doing the same thing that she's doing facing the camera. When I stand with one leg forward and one leg backward, the leg that is backward, there that pelvis slants back, but there's one positive thing, that the pelvis is open and the abdomen is open, but nevertheless there is this tilt as the leg goes back. And when this hip tilts back, you will see that there is a stark difference in the way both of the gluteus muscles engage with the sacrum. That is, here is the sacrum and there is this front leg's gluteus muscle which does not pinch into the sacrum, but there is this back leg's gluteus muscle which rolls back towards the sacrum and creates a certain congestion here. So the sacrum goes and plugs toward, the buttock muscle goes and plugs towards the sacrum, creating a lack of freedom in the sacrum, sacroiliac joint and the run of the gluteus. Therefore, it does not free up the nervous supply that runs through the back of the leg. To correct this, the practitioner takes the hand and holds the crease of the buttock. You have to make sure you are taking your hand all the way to the inner edge of the crease of the buttock toward the perineum. As you open this crease of the buttock from in to out, into out, into out, you will see this miraculous transformation where broadening this little space of the crease of the buttock or the gluteal fold takes care of the broadening, lack of pinching of the gluteus, freedom of the sacrum, sacroiliac joint, broadening of the hamstring, broadening of the calf and broadening of the heel, as if this one broadening reverberates through the length of the black thigh and gluteus. When this is correctly done, then the supply of the nerves that go from the greater sciatic foramen and from the sacrolumbar plexus runs free through the back posterior leg. That gluteal crease correction is essential when we go into any position where one leg is forward and the other leg is backward.